Hello, everybody. This is Travis.
Hello, everybody. This is Brandon.
Yeah, we're here.
Yeah.
2018. What do you know? We're still alive.
What do you know?
What? That's it. That's literally all I know, Brandon.
I thought for certain that when the ball dropped in Times Square, that everyone else would be dead, even the people in Australia who obviously made it to 2018.
Yeah, who had spent like all day already in 2018.
Like, what is it about America where we think like the end of the world is going to start here? You know?
Yeah, and specifically on the East Coast. You know.
Right. Yeah. Like Greenwich time. That's the mean standard. That's the standard time. That's where we should go.
Yeah, I feel like if the apocalypse is going to start anywhere, it's going to start in Greenwich Mean Time. Anyway, welcome to Interdimensional RSS, the unofficial Rick and Morty podcast. So happy to be back and celebrating a new year, a new season, an old season, if you will, of the podcast. And Rick and Morty, we're excited to dive into some more episodes and get back where it all began, back on the pilot. Season
back on
1.
Easy Street.
Yeah.
That's where we where it all Easy Street is where it all began, where it will all end.
Yeah. Again with the doomsday conversation. Well, thank you so much to everyone who is listening to the show. Maybe hopefully this can fill a little bit of the empty space that is the off season of Rick and Morty until we get any possible news about season 4.
We also call it the gap.
The gap. We're minding that gap right now.
Minding the gap. Go get yourself some nice pants.
Oh yeah, at the Gap.
Yeah.
Not a sponsor. Anyway, if you do want to connect with the show, there are so many ways that you can do that. You can head over to Twitter, follow us at Rick and Morty Pod, on our subreddit, rickandmortypodcast.reddit.com, over on Facebook at facebook.com/Rick and Morty Podcast. Send us some emails. Somebody did at rickandmortypodcast@gmail.com. Obviously, you can buy t-shirts at apatheticenthusiasm.com/shop or support the show over at patreon.com/rickandmortypod. That's it. That's all of the important stuff that I have to rattle off at the beginning of the show. Otherwise, I don't know. Nothing else happens. Like I just do it.
We've never once gotten a complaint that we didn't do the social media.
Yeah, no, it's like,
right.
I was listening, and you guys didn't mention where to follow you on Twitter.
Maybe that's what those 2-star reviews are for, and they're like they didn't know what to say because we would have given this to you directly, but instead
we'll just leave this here. We'll just leave this here. Well, did you have a good New Year's, Brandon, and everything go all right for you out there and Florida?
Yeah, I mean down here in Florida, yeah, everything went well. I watched some Twilight Zone. The marathon is rocking.
Typical.
It's by the time this episode airs, the Twilight Zone marathon will be done, and in another year down, and that's fantastic. I also watched some Rick and Morty. I don't know if you caught that there was a marathon.
There was a bit of a marathon taking place, shared out on our Facebook page.
Yeah, good news. The Twilight Zone marathon and the Rick and Morty marathon are only a channel apart if you're using Charter Communication.
Thank you very much. Well, good. Yeah, it got to what appeared to be record, maybe not completely record lows, but it was friggin' cold in Nebraska. And so I've been dealing with car problems and all sorts of things. I keep beer in my fridge and don't have to refrigerate it now. It's, there's a silver lining in everything, Brandon.
You're saving money on electricity by unplugging your fridge, but it's evening out because then you have to heat your home.
My refrigerator is warmer than the temperature outside, so I don't know, or my freezer even. I don't know. What I'm saying is I have a walk-in fridge now, and I keep my cars in it.
Yeah, that's awesome. Congratulations on getting your battery changed in your van.
Yeah,
because the
that's
cold
right.
Cold weather kills batteries.
Everybody knows it. Everybody's saying it.
There's universal truths, everyone out there. Unity. Universal truths, loose lips sink ships, and also cold weather kills batteries.
I saw, and I forgive the artist for not remembering who did this, but they did a modern version of those like World War II propaganda posters, and one of them was loose tweets sink fleets, and I always think of that now. All right, that's enough. That's enough nonsense. Let's get into. We do have a brand new feature on the show, but before we get into that, we need to talk about semi-pertinent news.
And then there were one collection of people in the world, two collections of people in the world saying semi-pertinent news. I said, there's one people, it's two people, it's semi-pertinent news.
That's beautiful, Brandon.
That's
beautiful.
I wish I had like a chorus behind me of just like the gospel singers, like in the gospel singing outfits.
Yeah, like people come in from the door behind you, like in robes, clapping it out.
Yeah.
Not a lot going on in the world of Rick and Morty, in or outside of the podcast, unfortunately. So semi-pertinent news. We're looking for it wherever we can. If you come across a nugget, a little bit of semi-pertinent news, please send it over to us on all those links I rattled off earlier. But you found something pretty recent, I'd say within 24 hours, Brandon.
It was a last-minute addition to semi-pertinent news. Yeah, I was rolling through the Rick and Morty Discord,
as we do,
as I do, and somebody posted a video from Twitter. Evidently, there was last night at the Dead Mouse 5.
Oh, Dead Mouse, just Dead Mouse.
Yeah, Dead Mouse 5. So at a Dead Mouse concert last night, heading into the new year, there was a Rick and Morty short that played and basically counted down to the end to New Year's. But it was like a whole skit about Rick and Morty trying to disarm a bomb. They thought it was a bomb.
Right. Yeah.
Anyways, so there's video out there on Twitter. We'll put in the show notes, of course. But did you end up listening to the whole thing, Tarbin?
I think I did. Like afterwards when Rick's like talking, like, guess it wasn't. It's just New Year's. Yeah. Like.
yeah. And Morty's like, I just wanted to go to Disneyland. And Rick also at some point said, it looks like a bunch of dumb assholes worshiping a mouse.
Very, very good. Yeah. I want to say Dead Mouse has said some things in the past about being a fan of Rick and Morty, obviously. I also know he's super into Minecraft, which is something he and Dan Harmon have in common. So, I don't know. Maybe they've...
Didn't you want to buy South?
Yeah, I think...
He was involved in the South.
I think he was involved in Southgate a little bit, but we don't want to talk about that.
No,
that's we've moved on, even though we're still waiting for the wide release of the sauce.
Travis and I were talking about, is there anything we want to talk about in semi-pertinent news? And the question came up, well, do we want to bring up the whole Szechuan sauce and the fact that it hasn't been released yet before 2018? And we both...
Yeah, we decided we don't want to talk about it.
We decided we're not going to. So
and
just
so we won't. We won't even bring it up.
I'm not even going to edit it. I'm not even going to edit that out. But we're not going to talk about it anymore.
Yeah, it's not even going to come up. So if you were expecting it, I'm sorry to let you down.
Right.
Yeah, but that's pretty much it on the old semi-perts, which brings us into our next temporarily named segment, which will or will not get a song. Do you have a song?
Oh,
I know you are working on music, but it's not improvised music, Brandon.
Holy shit! Yeah. Okay. So I was totally going to. I don't even know how I forgot about that. I was gonna make music for this new segment. I'll have it for next episode.
Okay,
I'll have something.
This is still growing. It's a new thing we're trying. We said this in our little holiday short episode. We're trying new creative things, including trying new stuff on the podcast. So we are doing a new segment that is currently called the Fantasy Face Off, but it's very open to Unity's opinions. So if you guys, after you hear what we're doing and what's going on with this segment, if you guys have a better name for this, we would love to get your input and be happy to credit you with the name for this segment. But the inspiration for this actually came from a listener email, Sci-Fi Pie, who I'm pretty sure we've mentioned a few times on the podcast. Sure. Sent in a great email to us talking about being happy that the show's coming back and that they missed the sultry sounds of our voices. Something I may be paraphrasing a little bit. But yeah, so one of the things that came up in the email was a question about characters in Rick and Morty and who would win in a fight. And this is pretty classic kind of, who would win conversation, Batman versus Superman,
like Knight Rider versus Airwolf.
Yeah, exactly. The typical conversations you have around the holiday dinner table. Yeah. But we got to thinking about it, and Brandon, you thought this had potential to be something that could be sort of a recurring bit on the show.
Yeah, recurring bits. Yeah, so Sci-Fi Pie hit us up in that email, and I had already been thinking about, like, what else can we add to the show to get Unity involved a little bit more?
Yeah.
And so when Sci-Fi Pie hit us up, and I was like, oh, yeah, exactly. And it's pretty standard, the whole fighting figures stuff. Yeah. So what I did was trying to figure out how we can do it. What I did is there's sites out there that you can make automated generators. So you just have to compile a list of a bunch of characters, do a little configuration here and there, press a button, and it'll give you two characters versus each other with a random weapon. And what I did was I got a bunch of characters. I have the Rick and Morty Munchkin, so I didn't have to do a lot of research. I just copied the cards.
You just copied it directly from that game.
And then grab some of the weapons from there. So as we move forward, what I think what we're gonna do is at the end of the segment we're gonna press the button. We're gonna see who's up next for next week. We're gonna put this out on Twitter. We're gonna put it on Facebook. We'll involve Facebook people as well, so you can vote and tell us who you think will win. And based off of that, we will then come up and announce the winner here on an episode with a little backstory.
A little bit of our personal take on maybe how such an encounter might go down.
like a turkey, like a Thanksgiving turkey of creative juices.
Gotta baste it.
But basic. I don't know.
No, just move on. Just move on.
That's what we're gonna do. And so the first fight ever. I guess this is an example. This is we're trying it out, but this was one of the suggestions from Sci-Fi Pie in the email. They asked who would win Crumbopulous Michael versus Squanchy, and so we did a real quick try to get some Unity feedback. Brandon sent a tweet out there with maybe like 6 hours worth of. I set that shit for 6 hours.
Yeah,
and you're like,
we're gonna have it out much longer on future episodes. But yeah, we just wanted to get a little bit of feedback from you guys on who you think would win in that fight, and what was the result, Brandon?
The results are in. The fight was Crumbopulous Michael versus Squanchy at a whopping 24 votes.
Heyo.
Total. That's how many votes we got in 6 hours time. Which I'll as an aside, that's more votes than I thought we were gonna get in 6 hours.
It's fair enough.
Because the Plasma Marathon, everyone's tweeting about it.
Yeah, it makes sense.
Yeah, they don't have time for Rick. Anyway, the votes are in. 67% of people voted for Mr. Squanchy.
Squanchy.
Squanchy wins.
There was some questions about like how much lead time would Crumbopulous Michael have. and I think that's great and all, but I really, when it boils down to it, I don't think it matters, because even a Chrombopulus Michael, I mean, he's obviously an excellent fighter, and he's very stealthy, but I think what it really boils down to is him underestimating Squanchy, because Squanchy, walking into that fight, he's already bringing some surprises with him. You're gonna underestimate that little Squanch.
Absolutely. Have you ever seen the movie with Jackie Chan, Legend of Drunken
Yes.
Master?
Oh, I thought you were just asking me if
Rush
I'd seen
Hour.
a Jackie Chan movie.
Rush Hour 3. Have you seen Rush Hour 3?
Probably.
You underestimate Jackie Chan in that film. Also Drunken Master. Because you think they're incompetent. You think, this is an easy fight to win. Like Kung Fu Panda. Let's go with an easier example. You don't expect a panda to win. He's a
don't.
panda.
You never expect the Panda Inquisition.
He's hungry.
That's right.
When Squanchy goes into a fight, he's coming in. He's drunk. He looks scraggly, and you think, he's probably just looking for a closet to jerk
To
himself.
Squanchin. Yeah.
I mean, Squanch.
Yeah. Yeah. That's
Squanchin'.
it. That's it. But as we saw in the finale of season 2, Squanchy is definitely capable of hulking out, if you will. And I definitely think that in this case, that is not something that Chrombopulus Michael would expect. And so well done, everybody, with your pick on Squanchy. I definitely think he would he's probably rip that
Yeah.
what's his
Here's how I think. This is just an example. I think we'll explore this a little bit further next time around for the next round of characters. But I think what would happen is Chrombopulus would, of course, not know who this little character is.
Yeah.
He'd be like, oh yeah, I could take care of him. I just love killing, and go after him. And Squanchy will either do something kind of squanched up. And then he'll take his tooth out. He'll drink the poison, and he'll turn into, what is it, Mega Squanch, or right? And
Yeah.
and that's gonna to shatter Chromopopulus's confidence.
Yeah.
Right? It's gonna shatter it.
Yeah, it'd be a moral victory, and then he'd actually kill him. But
Yeah.
one last thought before we move on and we pick the next characters. Squanchy's still MIA. We really haven't seen or heard anything from Squanchy since the wedding. What is your perceived take on the fate of that little Squanch?
We just talked about how we're underestimating him.
Yeah, that's true.
He's out in the world. He's out
Yeah.
in the galaxy somewhere, and
We've seen Tammy. We've seen Phoenix Person. Squanchy, we're praying for you, bud.
Look, no body.
Come back to us.
No death.
No body, no
standard-
death. There you
standard
go.
comic rules.
Perfect. All right. So Brandon, are you ready? Are you fired up to pick a couple of characters for our next episode for Unity to vote on?
I am absolutely, Travis. I'm so glad you asked. I just clicked the button that I made say fight with an exclamation point, and here are your characters for next week. So we're gonna put this on Twitter. We'll make a poll for 7 days, and also Facebook. Unity, go out there and vote. Here's what your characters are, and they're. Should we do the weapons? I don't know. The weapons are.
I don't know. We
Uh,
can throw the weapons in there. Let's try it. We're
just
playing it fast and loose.
Anyways, it's tuberculosis versus jaguar
Oh, Jaguar.
with a pair of grappling shoes.
Oh, that is interesting.
That's why
They
I threw it
each
out
have a
there.
pair of grappling shoes, or is there a pair of grappling shoes in the middle, and they gotta try to get at them.
I don't know. That's the only thing available. I don't know. There's
Okay.
grappling shoes there. That's the only definitive.
Grappling shoes are there. Remember to turn them on. Yeah. All right. So let us know who you think would win in that fight. If you have suggestions of why a particular character might win, feel free to send those to us. And if you have a suggestion for this segment, let us know a name suggestion. and we'll try to get through these and speed them up. We had to describe it a lot here, but hopefully this will be a fun little bit that we can do before we get into what everyone is dying to hear, the main thing.
The main thing. Ooh, you main thing. I'm starting with Pilot. Ooh,
Yeah.
My voice isn't a good theremin.
It ended abruptly there. But thank you, Brandon. Yeah, it's time for the main thing. It's time to start talking about episodes again.
Thing.
Whew. I almost forgot how we did these.
Yeah, no, you're right. Dude, again, you skip podcasting for like 2, 3, 4 weeks, maybe a month, and you come back into it and you're like, fuck. What am I?
It isn't riding a bicycle, everybody. There's you fall down a few times. But yeah, I did. I went back. I looked at some of our peak season 3 episodes to try and recall some of the things that we got into when we were reviewing those episodes. And I think many of those things we can do for the season 1 episodes, but especially with time on our side and the fact that we have years since these episodes came out, there's a lot more information that we can sort of look back on. We can look at some of these episodes with new perspective because we've seen the things that come after it. So I'm excited to start going through these episodes and talk about the things that we like, the things that maybe we wish were different or that we weren't fond of at the time when we first saw it. And also just going back and watching these episodes and kind of reliving season 1. So if you guys are getting the chance to rewatch these with us, we'd love to hear your feedback. Hit us up between episodes on what you think about season 1, episode 2 next week, and we can incorporate those into the next podcast as well. But first up, the pilot, entitled Pilot.
Pilot, yes. Or it's like those truck stops on I-40. The Pilot? I think those are gas stations.
Yeah, I think they're gas stations. Yeah,
whatever.
That's definitely what they're named after, by the way.
So the episode originally aired December 2nd in 2013.
Whew.
And
that was like 5 years ago, Brandon.
It's oh my God, 2013 doesn't seem that long ago.
Yeah, I mean, really, it's only like four years and a month, but
yeah, but it doesn't seem that long ago.
Yeah.
And so the interesting thing was, but you're gonna see, but it's only the pilot was like they created the pilot and they did all that stuff. And then a year later, they came back to do the rest of the series. So
yeah,
as we're watching the pilot, for the first time, and then switching to subsequent episodes, that's you see how different it already is between the two of them.
Oh yeah.
So I think that's interesting, and I want to also mention and confirm, or not confirm, but reinforce what you said. It's going to be difficult to watch these episodes with a clear lens. We're tainted, so to speak,
sure,
with
yeah,
knowing what everything that happens after. So do our best to kind of look at them purely.
Sure, I guess,
so.
Or not. We'll see. We'll do our best. We'll do our best.
Do it how we want.
Yeah. So the pilot episode, written by Dan Harmon and Justin Roiland, directed by Justin. Normally I run down sort of a synopsis of the episodes, but realistically, I kind of boiled this down to one sentence, maybe 1.5 sentences. Rick needs Morty to go run a sci-fi errand with him, and we meet all the main characters. That is, I mean, really all that happens in this episode. And so when you look at it in that way, definitely not necessarily the most complicated Rick and Morty episode. Even the adventure that they get on is pretty basic, but I think it's safe in that way, and as an introduction to the characters themselves. I feel like if you tried to add too much to what was going on, you might just like overload the audience, especially for a first first whack at meeting these characters.
Yeah, you say that it plays it. Well, I don't know you mean that they play it safe, but just as far as a pilot goes, it's kind of safe. But I, c- between this and the next episode, like they really tone down some of the alcoholism stuff and the Rick droopy face.
Yes.
They slow
The
down.
only time you really see him go completely blank, I think, in the series.
So I mentioned it before. I think we talked about it on a different episode how, in some ways, this episode kind of subverts some of the pilot-y tropes. It can't get away from them completely because it is a pilot, and you have
Right.
to introduce all these main characters right away. But it does introduce some of these aspects and then quickly gets rid of them. As for so the episode starting off like him Morty going to school and him like Frank Palicki and getting bullied by Frank Palicki. Like,
Right.
oh, if you're watching it the first time, you're like, oh, this is somebody who, because we're watching a pilot, is going to be his kind of antagonist throughout the series.
Right. Yeah. Exactly.
And he's immediately frozen and dies. Right. And so to me, that's just one example of how the show says, okay, you kind of know what's going on, but we're going to try to go do something different with it.
Yeah, you're right, and I think that they do a really good job of introducing us to the family, sort of making it clear what the family dynamic is. Okay, we have the breakfast table, and everybody's sitting down. Morty can barely stay awake because he was just out trying to wrestle a neutrino bomb away from his drunken grandfather in a ship that he built out of spare parts in the garage. But yeah, but we meet Jerry, we meet Beth, we see Summer, who's kind of aware of everything that's going on, almost more aware than Beth and Jerry are. But you get those basic, here's why Rick is here. Oh, Rick is playing up certain emotional strings with Beth. And when he says like, "Oh, you really made the hell out of those eggs, Beth," like, I just wish your mother was here to enjoy them, or something like just how, and she like immediately like, "Oh, Dad, thanks," and how that sort of is already driving a wedge between Beth and Jerry.
Yeah, that breakfast scene has so many quick interactions that right away give you kind of who these characters are.
Right.
With Jerry being that. Being Jerry, right? Summer on her phone and kind of being like, "Ew," I forget the exact line that she said
Right.
in that part, but and then of course Beth, and it's such an efficient way to say these are who these characters are. Okay, let's get on with the rest.
Yeah,
of it.
let's move on. There's some great callbacks between that conversation and immediately moving into the school where Rick is talking about how school isn't a place for smart people. Some guy stands in front of the class, says 1 + 1, everybody says 2, and then they move right into that classroom scene where you get a sense for how Morty's school is. He's in high school, but he's still doing basic arithmetic for some reason. We meet the teacher, a figure with Mr. Goldenfold, and obviously you have the scene with Jessica. Where we see the object of Morty's affections. Not that women are objects. Just make that clear.
Yeah, the person of his affections.
Yes, the person.
Which hey, good job for the creators of the show, the writers, keeping that a kind of constant throughout the series.
Yeah.
And again, like you think, okay, that's going to be his main love interest, and it is, but you see her so infrequently throughout the series that it throws a viewer off. But
to do a quick tangent, because I don't want to run away from this thought, but I wonder why it is that Jessica is seen so infrequently, and I think part of it may be because of the structure of the show and the fact that Rick and Morty do go on so many like interdimensional adventures. They're not hanging out in the hometown that often, and so really Jessica is frequently present anytime they're doing something like throwing a party at the house or love potion, going to prom, but like yeah, she can't be on every planet. She can't be in an anatomy park. So yeah, it is hard for her to maybe be featured as much when they're off, who knows where.
Yeah, yeah. Obviously in the intro to the show, Rick is talking about repopulating the planet. Yeah, Morty is Adam and Jessica is Eve, and
yeah, and you don't gotta worry about me, Morty. I'm not gonna mess with Jessica. Anyway, that's what he says.
His God complex is,
Yeah.
is already there. It's already there at the very, very start.
I want to talk for a minute about that cold open scene, and it's something that I learned about through the shorts that Adult Swim was releasing during and towards the end of season 3, where they talked about how the show got started, and that scene where Rick is totally drunk and about to try and blow up the world, and Morty takes charge in that moment, and he grabs the wheel and fights against Rick in that.
Yeah.
And I think that scene is really important in showing that Morty is not gonna just be this go along with whatever Rick says and just this malleable grandson that can't speak his mind and can't have an opinion in the situation. And in those little vignettes that they showed online, that's sort of what got the show made, is them altering Morty to kind of fight against Rick in those moments a little bit more and stand up for himself.
Yeah, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm not sure that I've watched the same things as you have on that front.
All right,
So,
well, take my word for it. They're out there. If I can find a link, I'll add it to a show note or something. But
you're more of an expert than I am.
Oh, well,
Clearly.
That clearly, obviously, you heard it here. You hear it. But yeah, no, and I do think that's good, because there are a lot of times where we do look at Morty as sort of just this weak, helpless character, but he certainly does have his moments where he steps up and is able to accomplish impressive things.
Yeah.
For better or worse, he does try occasionally.
Absolutely. Yeah. So, okay. So the scene he goes into the school and then doing the math quiz.
1 + 1 is 2. Jessica.
He has the American Beauty dream about Jessica with numbers falling all around him.
Her little Mortys knock him around. No wrong answers.
Yeah. There's a line in there that, because I was watching it in subtitles this last time, that I thought was funny, and it's Mr. Goldenfold as he's I don't know, wait, is it he who says it? Now I wrote down the line. Anyways, there's a line in the background that he's like, crucial things happening here every day. People getting smarter, some of y'all getting dumber, some of y'all ain't gonna see 3 o'clock. And it's like as he's fading out.
He's fading out into the Jessica dream.
Yeah, and I just thought that was, I'd never caught it before. That's such a.
It's very faint. Yeah, it's hard to hear. And when he comes out of the dream, or he doesn't even fully come out of the dream, but Mr. Goldenfold is actually there, and it's not his fault this is happening to him. 5 more minutes, I'm gonna get mad. I love that line because it's like.
What makes that line so much better is that when he bites his lip.
Yeah. It's a side of Mr. Goldenfold we don't see a lot, but it's interesting. It's
we know he's pervy.
Yeah, sure.
It's
you don't know me.
Anyway, so okay, so moving on. So Rick comes, he gets Morty, and they're going on their adventures. He needs Morty for an adventure to get those mega seeds.
Those mega seeds, a staple of the show now.
Yes.
They've been featured in video games.
Yep.
They're on the
Pocket
pop
movies.
vinyl figures. They're all over the place. Those mega seeds. Some fan theories have even been created, saying that the mega seeds may be what makes Rick as smart as he is. There's all sorts of things tied around these mega seeds. Realistically, they're a thing that they need to go get in this episode.
Yeah. Let me ask you, the first time you ever watched Rick and Morty, the first time you watched this episode, when they make the transition from school, a place and that's not for smart people, all of a sudden now to this interdimensional place, dimension 35C for mega seeds. Like, what were your how did that make you feel? I'm a psychologist also.
It's weird because you let me borrow season 1 while I was laid up in bed and had a flu. So it was amazing because I may have been on some form of medication or potentially hallucinating. But yeah, and but it is very interesting how in that quick jump between a very traditional environment and everything that we've seen up to this point is a conventional looking, Earth environment, and then all of a sudden all bets are off. And it's an introduction saying, no, this show isn't going to be like a typical sitcom. We're going places you've never heard of. We're going to see things that are weird, and get ready because there's going to be really phallic and boob-like looking stuff everywhere.
So many testicles.
Yeah, just genitalia monsters galore.
Yeah, and the introducing the gravity boots, right?
That's right.
Introducing the more portal technology. After Morty falls down and breaks his legs, and his legs just happen to look like antenna.
Yes, that's right.
Later on in the series, as we got pointed that out in a tweet. So
yeah, thank you for that.
Rick goes through a different portal and we should have a conversation about this.
Yes. We should.
Into this other portal to get a serum that instantly heals Morty's legs. Now,
and he's gone for, I didn't time it, but maybe 10 seconds.
Yes.
Maybe.
And Morty's just
but when Rick gets back, he's like he fixes Morty's legs, and then as they're climbing up to get the mega seeds, he's like, "Listen, Morty, I went to a future dimension where everyone was young. They'd eliminated aging. I was the only old person there, and they had that leg repair serum on every drugstore counter, and there were a lot of women who were amazed by me or whatever, and a lot of young women, Morty, lots of them, and all of this to say, what's going on? Is time travel has been shelved, so to speak. We talk about how time travel isn't a thing on Rick and Morty. Yeah. But what is happening here? Is this time travel just the sheer idea that he's gone much longer in one dimension than he is what appears to us to be about 10 seconds? What's your take on it, Brandon?
It's a great question, and there's part of me that like, oh man, I've been wrong about this time travel stuff the entire time. But there's the other part of me that says, no, let me rationalize it so I'm not wrong. And so that's where I am right now on watching too. I mean, we know that in A Wrinkle in Time, that Wrinkle in Time, a Rixie business, that Rick can stop time, right? He can make time stop.
Yeah, that's true.
We also know that Slow Mobius has his staffs and makes a bitchin' ass party once you get the blockchain crystal.
Just showing off my powers, bro.
So it's wholly feasible that there's not time travel per se, but that he went to
some modification in time. And I want to say it's the series, the series 2 premiere where you have those testicle beasts. Yes. that are able to fully travel through time.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So it's in there in some way, shape, or form, but I don't I would go with you on the possible solution that maybe time just moves faster in the dimension that Rick went to. It's not necessarily time travel. It's just relative difference in time, and call it at that. But it's got no charge, Morty. The portal gun, it's got no charge.
Well, anyway, there's explanations, and we'd love to hear yours. If you think that we're
let us
clear.
know if maybe you just think it's time travel. Maybe we're totally wrong, but let us know what you guys think.
Yeah. So okay. So now they get the mega seeds. Turns out that because Rick was in that portal for so long. Oh, go ahead. You have a thought.
One quick
You
thing
raise
on the
your
mega
finger as
seeds,
if though you
and
have a thought.
it's an artistic thing, and I know someone caught it 3 years ago. When Rick rips the mega fruit open, and there's like a mega seed bulging out of each side of it, like it bothers me so much, the like physics in that, because it looks like one mega seed should be in the mega fruit, but it's in both sides, and I don't know if it's their way of like not caring and be like, haha, we're doing it this way anyway, or what, but I don't know. It just
it's been pointed out before. I don't know if it's when we talked to Brian Newton about it. I don't know if that's it or if it's something I read, but yeah, people have pointed out that like the two, like you open up the seed and then there's two seeds in there.
Yeah, it's like two avocado pits inside one avocado. I don't know. It just
purely artistic.
Okay. All right, moving on. So they got to shove those mega seeds way up there, Morty, and get through some intergalactic customs.
And Morty's taut yet malleable.
They just fall out of mine, Morty.
I've done it too many times.
Yeah, but then we get, which is sort of this continuation of seeing that this show isn't going to be a typical, earthbound sort of comedy, but we're introduced to a lot of crazy alien-looking characters, but also in a scenario that's very much familiar to us, like an airport customs sort of environment where people are waiting around for luggage or waiting to get on a mode of transportation. And so it's interesting to see these really crazy looking aliens doing something we're all very familiar with, which is going through security checkpoints.
Yeah, and there's some good stuff in in the background. The white zone is for loading and unloading, like kind of spoofs of that.
Yep.
We see like a Total Recall reference in there from one of the aliens from Total Recall, the original with Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah, there's a bunch of different like aliens and creatures that some are only shown for like a split second or as silhouettes in like a wide shot, but they definitely jammed a bunch of cameos into this scene.
You mentioned the silhouettes, and I want to talk about that real quickly. And again, I don't know if this is something Brian mentioned to us, but there in those scenes in the customs, there are fully fleshed out, fully colored aliens, and then they're like interspersed with that are just silhouettes.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you think that's from a lack of time or just effect, or was it?
I think like, especially on the really wide shot where they're establishing where they are, I think it's I don't know if it's a lack of time, maybe like an economy of resources sort of situation where they're like, we're not going to draw every single character. We'll draw them in silhouettes, and then this is a way for us to sneak in a couple characters that may be recognizable if you really take a close look at them. Yeah. But at the same time, just establish that, yes, there are a lot of people here. We're not going to draw every one of them because that's way too much work.
This is a pilot.
Yes.
This isn't. We don't even
if we get picked up for a season, we'll draw everybody else. How about that?
We'll go back to it. It's like when I'm recording something, I'm like, I'll release it right now. I'll go back to it.
Yeah, maybe I'll worry about it later.
Yeah. And 40 episodes later, we're
still there. It's still there. No, really great stuff. Obviously, Morty gets randomly checked to go through the new machine that is specifically designed to look for stuff way up your butthole. Yeah. So they start running. Morty has the great idea of using the boots to start running around the ceilings and through scaffolding and stuff like that. It's a cool chase scene. You get that really cool moment where like Morty coughs up a creature who goes through its entire lifespan like in that run, and Rick's only advice is not to think about it, Morty, and move on. Like, which sort of something as existential as that, with Rick saying, just don't think about it, just keep going, is sort of key to the future episodes and the direction the show goes.
The entire
from
series,
here,
really.
yeah.
When we talk to Riddles about some stuff, we're like, it's a joke. There's nothing to read into. It's sometimes a joke is a joke.
Yeah, exactly.
So I know I'm name dropping with Riddles, but yeah, we talked to Brian specifically about that. That was his addition to the pilot, was the alien living and dying right away.
Yeah.
And that's such a cool shot. I thought going through it, there's a scene where they run through like the back offices, and there's like some tubes with aliens in it.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was really cool, and I never considered this before, but as they're running behind the tubes are in the foreground, they're in the background, like their animation gets stretched out and magnified,
distorted through the liquid, sort of. Yeah.
Yeah. And I thinking about that, like that's a really cool detail, and the animators didn't have to have them running behind the tubes. They could have easily just gone like in front of it and smashed them.
Yeah.
But yeah, good detail there.
One of the things that Inked Inspector on Twitter brought up was, all kidding aside, love how Rick equates bureaucrats to robots. Robots cracks me up every time. Probably one of my favorite lines in this episode as well, when he says, "Just shoot them, they're robots," and then the Gromflemite is like, "Oh, tell his wife and kids to get here quick. He's bleeding out." And they're like, "They're not robots, Rick. They're bureaucrats. I don't respect them." I love that series of events right there so much. One of my favorite parts of the episode.
Have you seen the video of the story of that Gromflemite?
I may have heard about it. Was that on like the AR thing that they did between seasons 2 and 3? Website.
I don't know if it's. Honestly, I don't. I should know this. I didn't know if it was an official thing or if it was fan made.
I don't know.
But yeah, it was the story of Glenn, and like the day before he gets shot by a buddy.
God.
And like what's like him saying goodbye to his wife and kid. Because it's like a new job. He didn't even want to. He didn't even want to be in that.
It's just
job.
paying the bills, you know.
It was like first day. That sucked. Anyways. Sorry. Go ahead.
Well, yeah. So they get through there. They fire up the portal, and they end up back at the high school. Jessica seems somewhat impressed that Morty pulls into the cafeteria using a portal, and but they're quickly caught by Principal Vagina, no relation, and and Jerry and Beth, who are there because Morty has missed a lot of school. I think he's only gone to 7 hours in the last month. Mm-hmm. And Beth and Jerry are ready to send Rick away to like a retirement home, a nursing home, and this is when we find out that Rick really wants to stay around, and he wants to keep going on adventures with Morty, and he uses some very timely mega seed reactions to make his case.
But before we get into that, I want to ask a question. In this pilot, Jerry's whole conceit is that he goes to Beth, sees her at St. Aquinas while she's operating on a horse, and she yells at her assistant and says, "Yeah, I know we're losing him. I can hear the thing the same as you."
We hear the beeps.
The whole putting Rick into a retirement home, how something that we haven't seen or heard of ever again throughout the rest of the series. knowing what we know now, how kind of disconnected is that from from what we know of Rick? Like would he ever actually allow himself to be put into a retirement home?
No, he wouldn't. And I think he very quickly, you know, manipulates the situation so that it not only does it not become a thing where Rick is like overpowering the situation and making it like I'm going to do this because I want to, or I'm going to be here because I want to be here, but he's manipulating Jerry and manipulating Beth even by saying like, look how smart Morty is becoming by hanging out with me and my influence here, and completely turns the tables to where it's Beth and Jerry's idea, like, oh, I don't want this to stop, we have to keep Rick here.
Yeah.
Right. So it's a situation where I don't think Rick would ever allow it to happen. Rick would, if he was for some reason not allowed to stay at the Smith house, he could go wherever he wants and do whatever he wants. But because that's where he wants to be, he is going to find a way to stay and at the same time not make it seem like it's his idea, but actually make it seem like it's Beth and Jerry's idea.
Right. Yeah, just what we know of the character now. It's like such a minor league threat.
Oh yeah. It's total Jerry move, right? Like
yeah,
Jerry. I think at this point in the series, and I get the impression that Rick hasn't been around that long, maybe a month, and so we come into this relationship very early on figuring out, you know, sort of how Morty is going to be impacted by Rick's presence and things like that.
Yeah. Jerry says a line there, talking about the retirement home, talking about building baskets, watch Paul Newman movies on VHS, and mentally scar Boy Scouts every Christmas. And Beth asks, "What?" and then,
doesn't Jerry say like it's personal or something, or like yeah?
So there, if any fans are out there chomping at the bit to make a Jerry prequel, I think there's your premise right there.
You've got some ideas. I have a question. Well, let's round out the rest of the episode real quick. We get the epic after the mega seeds wear off and Morty loses all motor functions. You get that epic rant by Rick at the end. 100 years, Rick and Morty, www. rickandmorty.com. That whole thing, which the scene is then replayed with the season 3 premiere, and just sort of an iconic piece of Justin Roiland ranting, kind of sneaking into the show, and just like you get the impression that was probably for the most part improvised, and maybe a little bit of a taste of some other potential improvised Rick type things that could come forward, and then obviously the interdimensional cable episodes and things like that.
Yeah, I want to bring up again the fact that this is a pilot, and for the pilot to end on this kind of explanatory note. It's
sure.
Like, this is what this show's going to be about. Let me overkill you with what
we're gonna go on adventures, and we're gonna do all these things, and for 100 years. Assuming the show gets picked up, 100 years and 100 times, assuming Adult Swim is happy and pays for the show,
which of course mirrors the premiere for season 3, and which might be why people were so quick, or maybe not quick, but so willing to accept like this is what his motivation is. It's mirroring season 1, the pilot.
Yeah.
So of course, like we just figured out this is what his motivation, how absurd his motivation is,
mm-hmm.
For the rest of season 3. So I thought that's interesting. As far as this very shout out to Ryan Elder, who did the music for the series, right? Doing that whole like orchestral score, really swelling score. It's so inspirational, and it is perfectly juxtaposed against the absurdity of Rick going all out about
and Morty like writhing on the ground and like just drooling and completely incapacitated to the point where you don't even know if Morty's really hearing the things that Rick is saying. If it's for Morty's benefit or if it's just Rick wanting to hear himself say these things.
The absurdity is just so great, and that music it makes that scene as much as Royland's ranting to himself.
Absolutely. So I have a couple of final questions for you, some thoughts to leave on here. One of those things is, as far as Rick and Morty episodes go, my personal feeling is this isn't the strongest Rick and Morty episode, and I definitely do think that the episodes, as they sort of figure out who the characters are, figure out some of the dynamics between the different relationships, and really go a lot further with the adventures. There are so many more episodes that are really great. Do you feel that this episode is a good entry point for people if you're trying to show people Rick and Morty for the first time? Do you think it's good to start with the pilot, or do you think it's better to start maybe with one of those stronger episodes, kind of get them on the hook, and then be like, all right, now let's go back and see where it all started?
We've definitely talked about this, and I think it's a very standard kind of talking point for fans of the show, when they're especially trying to get new people to watch it.
Sure.
I would say, and I've said before, that the pilot is not a great starting point. Very rarely in TV is the pilot a good starting point for television. With the exception, I always throw Lost out there. Like, Lost is the perfect pilot for a show, because we'll talk about that on
we'll talk about that on our Lost podcast that we're never going to do.
But pilots are there to introduce you to the universe and get you spun up. They're not there necessarily. They should hook you, but they're not. They have to go through standard lines, which I mentioned that it does subvert some of the tropes, but it's still kind of traditional to it.
Yeah, I and as a person who is always like, oh, I want to view things in order. I don't like spoilers. I want to, I want to watch things sequentially. I would have to agree and say maybe pick a really strong episode, and then go back and be like, all right, let's watch everything else, because there have been a couple times where I started people on the pilot, and they're like all of Rick's burping, which is like way over the top in this episode. Yeah. And like just some of the things that happen, they aren't balanced as well with like really strong adventure or really, like awesome additional plots or things like that. So you don't get the full, awesomeness of the show, I think, in this episode. And once you kind of understand all of that, I think you can appreciate the pilot a little bit more, because you know who the characters are and sort of the direction that they're moving. But I agree.
Absolutely. Good question. Thank you, Travis. Unity, you let us know. I think for the most part, everyone out there agrees with us. Everybody.
There is no one that thinks that.
There's no little subsection of anybody who disagrees with us. Travis, you have a note here. Actually, this might have been a note I put in. Whatever, it doesn't matter. It's crazy to see how far the art and overall production value has come from this pilot episode into what we see now in season 3 and hopefully season 4.
Yeah.
Although I will say, like, there's some like really cool shots in the pilot that that iconic when they first get to C-35 and it's their silhouettes in the foreground and just the background of this crazy testicle filled dimension.
Yeah.
But like
they're actually like my cycle of desktop wallpapers that cycles through automatically is actually the shot where Rick is walking with Morty on that planet and kind of like pointing out everything that's like you're not gonna see stuff like this back home. You gotta look around you. But I think while there are a lot of great shots and great moments and really great scenes, I think the artists, as often happens, they develop certain techniques or certain styles over the course of developing a show. And so I was looking through the Rick and Morty art book, and it talks a lot about the pilot and how like just everything down to like Rick's eye blinks, and how they have like 3 different types of blinking for Rick in this episode, because they hadn't really figured out how Rick should blink and how to standardize it. So I think obviously they clean up those sorts of things moving forward, but then they're also taking more chances, and so they're throwing more stuff into scenes, and you kind of visit some really crazy places that the Rick Lantis mix up. Like once you get to that point, you just have like huge sprawling cityscapes and a variety of characters and the things that they're doing with those. It's just like, wow, they've really gotten to a new point with the things that they're willing to do with the show.
Completely agree. Like talking about like Ghost Train in the Vindicators episode.
Oh yeah.
Right. Just the character design on those Mammalian Ant-Man, right? Like that's the animators, the artists challenging themselves, knowing that Adult Swim, Justin, the whole crew, like they just want to keep pushing themselves.
Yeah.
And you know, the pilot, they have some really good shots, and it just kept getting better and better and better.
Absolutely.
So, shout out to everybody there. Travis, I wanna ask you this. One things we did season 3, favorite bits.
Favorite bits.
Favorite bit. What's your favorite bit of the episode?
Well, I really like when they talk about getting into high concept sci-fi rigmarole, but the moment when Rick is sort of counseling Morty, and he's like, he's it's like this inspirational speech where he's talking about facing your fears and facing things head on and not like not running away from the things that scare you. And then immediately some weird monster comes up from behind them, and Rick freaks out and takes off running because he hasn't seen it before. And he's like literally yelling, "We're gonna die! We're gonna die!" Like, I just love the way that immediately shifts in the opposite direction.
Yeah, that is a really good bit. Traditionally, I'm fond the bureaucrats.
Yeah,
they're bureaucrats, Morty. I don't respect them. Traditionally, that is my favorite bit. This last time I was watching, the one thing that actually made me laugh out loud was when they're talking about Morty. He's got some kind of disability or something, and Morty says, "Do I?" And Jerry says, "Well, doy, son." And I hadn't caught it before. And I busted up laughing.
Yeah, that's great. That's a really big thing to drop on a guy. You know, that's absolutely. There are some classic bits in this episode, and Unity, let us know. Hopefully, you got a chance to rewatch this episode. Let us know your thoughts. Hit us up with some of your favorite bits. Send this over to us on Twitter, over on Facebook, or hit us with an email, because you know those are still a thing.
They are indeed.
And speaking of email, let's get into our listener suggestions and short outs for this week.
Switching the bit. Switching segments.
Yay! First up, thank you to our latest patron over on Patreon.com. Big thanks to Justin for the support. Our first $10 patron, which now requires us to figure out how we're gonna do an interactive live stream with just him, with just Justin. Unless someone else wants to sign up for 10 schmeckles, and then you can join us later this month when we figure out how to do a live stream. We'll plan something good for you, Justin, and thanks to everyone for the support on Patreon.
We're gonna make your first time special. That's
right.
Guarantee.
You want it to be special. Over on the Twitterverse, Dakota Jack, who also sent an email. What is that little Yoda-like thing in the bushes, looking at them during their picnic in the 6th photo. So this is in reference to the poop in his pants or whatever is Mr. Poopy Pants scene that we talked about a couple of weeks ago, asking if he missed something or if it's just an outside reference to something that he doesn't know about. I've definitely seen that character before in an episode. Brandon, were you able to pin it down or figure out what he was talking about?
Is it the same like Kermit the Frog looking thing that we see here in the pilot?
No, it's much more like almost Predator looking. Like I think it's got like some fangs or things like that. I don't know that it's a specific character in the show, but I definitely think it's a model that they've used in the past for other episodes.
So if anybody can help us answer that question or answer Dakota Jack directly, he's at Royne Stadion BA. The other thing we want to point out is he sent us a different tweet that says, "We finally found out who Principal Vagina has no relation to."
Yes, that's right.
And it's an article. It says, "Wow, this woman stood up to gender norms by naming her son Vagina."
Yeah, and that young child will grow up to be a principal. It's the only thing he can do. Also want to give a special shout out to Stacy's Parlor, longtime friend on Twitter, and has sort of been promoting our show for a really long time. She's got a couple of podcasts of her own, so go check her out. But she did her 12 pods of Christmas around the Christmas break, and included Interdimensional RSS. So we wanted to say thank you very much for doing that, and appreciate all of your support.
Yes, and please check her out. And I think we're still invited to help her out with a charity event sometime in April.
Sometime. Yeah, remind us about those things, please, Stacy. Thank you.
Okay, so email. We talked about Sci-Fi Pie. We'll bring up the fantasy battle stuff again. So here's your to-do list for the next 2 weeks. Unity. 1, give us a better name for that segment. 2, make sure you vote on who do you think is going to win between tuberculosis and Jaguar with some grappling shoes. And thanks, Sci-Fi Pie. Make sure you send Sci-Fi Pie a thank you.
Yeah. And you guys can send us an email, or normally we talk about reviews, but we don't have any new reviews this week. So if you have not gotten a chance to leave a review for the show, especially if you're enjoying it, head over to iTunes or Stitcher or whatever podcatcher you're using in 2018 and leave a review for the show. We appreciate it, and it helps with discoverability and things like that. So plenty of stuff for you guys to stay busy with over the next week or so while we get ready for our second episode of season 1, Lawnmower Dog, coming up.
Yeah,
we're gonna hit that one again in a more standardized format. But we appreciate everybody who is keeping up with the show. Thank you guys for listening and sharing the show with fellow Rick and Morty fans. And that's it. So I'm gonna go eat dinner now.
Yeah, that's good call, Trav.
Yeah. So until next week or the week after that, because we're doing these next week is Apathetic Enthusiasm. Go download that one too.
Let's start with that.
But until next time, I'm Travis.
And I'm Brandon.
Bye.
For listening.
Bye.